Hello again, Tom Simmons here with another installment of Economics with Tully. We're here in Ashfield, Massachusetts, one of the many towns in western Massachusetts that is dotted with family farms, some of which are profitable, all of which struggle from time to time with market forces around them. And the reason that so many family farms struggle for survival year after year is due to a phenomenon that economists call market structure. Market structure is a way to examine markets for goods or services by looking at the degree of competitiveness, the nature of the product, the number of firms in the industry, and the ease of firms entering that industry. We also look at the amount of information that is available to the public when making various choices. Most agricultural enterprises find themselves in the market structure that we call perfect competition. And there are basically four different types of market structures. Perfect competition, imperfect competition, which is sometimes called monopolistic competition, not to be confused with monopoly, oligopoly, and monopoly. And as I said, most agricultural enterprises find themselves in the market structure that we call perfect competition. That is a market structure that often results in the lowest possible prices for consumers, but is also the single most difficult market structure for producers to make a profit and expand and move on. And so what we're going to do now is I'm going to be taking you inside, and we're going to be looking at precisely why so many family farms struggle and why the market structure of perfect competition is so difficult for producers. So, here we are back in the kitchen. As I said outside, firms that operate in the perfectly competitive market structure have certain characteristics. Those characteristics are these. Number one, there are many firms in the industry. And that means the consumer has many, many different choices of places to go to purchase the good or to order the good from. Secondly, it is relatively easy for a new firm to enter the industry. Now, that's not to say that farming is easy. I actually would never say that. However, in terms of, from an economic perspective, setting yourself up in business and trying to make a go of it, putting a sign out, farming is relatively easy. Almost anyone with a plot of ground can attempt to do it. I'm not saying it's easy to survive, that it's easy to win at, that it's easy to make a profit at. It's simply an easy industry to enter, to make the effort to compete in. So many firms, easy to enter the industry. Third, there's much information out there for the consumer. The consumer has a good idea as to where they can get the product from, who the competition is, and what the price should be. Let me give you an example of that. I want you to imagine that you are driving down a road or a highway that you have never been on before, maybe in a neighboring state that you have never been in before, and you stop into a coffee shop that you've never been into before, and maybe you don't even drink coffee. Chances are you still have an idea as to about what a large cup of coffee will run. You don't expect it to be 50 cents, and you don't expect it to be $4. You expect that it's probably going to be $1.50 to $2.50, somewhere in there. And that's even if you've never been to that location, on that road, in that place, and even if you don't drink coffee. Because the consumer has a lot of information, a lot of a sense about what the product is, what size it should be, what temperature it should be, and what the price is. So those are the first three attributes of firms that are operating in perfect competition. Consumer has a lot of information, many firms in the industry, many choices, and it's easy to enter the industry. And now here is the element that makes perfect competition so difficult for firms that find themselves stuck in this market structure. I got 3 potatoes in my hand. 3 red potatoes. One of them is from Joe's farm in Maine. One of them is from Jill's farm in New Hampshire. One of them is from Jack's farm in Vermont. Can you tell which is which? Do you as a consumer have any idea where which potato came from? How to identify it as Jack or Jill's? Of course not. Any difference? Probably don't see much. And that is the problem when you're stuck in perfect competition. The fourth element is that the product is what we call standardized. The consumer does not see a difference between one producer's product and the other. They look all the same. So now think of yourself, rather than just as an individual consumer, think of yourself as a major cereal company. And you need to buy hundreds, thousands, maybe 1 million bushels of corn to make cornflakes. Neither you nor your ultimate customers really care whether the variety of that corn was yellow-white hybrid number 6 or silver queen number 12. Neither you nor your consumers generally care whether that corn was grown in downstate Illinois or central Iowa or somewhere in Wisconsin. You don't know, you don't care, and in fact, you tend to buy bushels of corn from all over and mix it together anyway, so that no one ever really knows precisely what they're eating and where it's coming from. Now, the problem with that is that when this cereal company goes to buy hundreds or thousands of bushels of corn, if no one cares what farm it comes from or what state it comes from, and the quality is not seen by the consumer as being particularly different from producer to producer, then the only thing that is going to determine whether or not the producer sells his good or not is price. If Kellogg's is looking at one farmer who's selling corn at $5 a bushel, and a second farmer who sells at $5 a bushel, and they run across a third farmer who's selling at $4.99 a bushel, and they're buying 20,000 bushels, you can be sure that they're going to buy the corn where it's 1 cent cheaper. And that means a single penny on the price, even a fraction of a penny on the price, will make the difference between a producer selling all of their goods or nothing at all. And that means the lowest price in the market actually sets the price for everybody, because every producer is expected to match that price. Now, when you hear on the news that the price of soybeans today was $3.50 a bushel, the price of corn was $4 a bushel, the price of oil reached $70 a barrel. That is what we're looking at. What was the price that prevailed in the marketplace? Because even when it comes to crude oil, Mobil, Exxon, Shell, they really don't care whether that oil was drilled in Venezuela or Mexico or Scotland or Canada or Saudi Arabia or the United States. What matters to them is the price they get for that crude oil before they actually turn it into gasoline. So, price is now running the show here. And that means consumers usually get the lowest possible price for goods that are in a perfectly competitive market structure. But producers are called price takers. They have to take the market price, even if they need a higher price to cover their costs, because consumers will not purchase that good since the only thing they have to go on is price, and the lowest price prevails. Now, because of this phenomenon, many years ago, markets emerged centered in Chicago called commodity markets, or Commodities Futures Trading markets. And this enabled both the purchasers of agricultural goods and the sellers of agricultural goods to be able to lock in prices and transfer the risk inherent in those prices onto people who wanted to gamble on price. Let me explain how this works. Most farmers in the Midwest do not sell directly to Kellogg's or Post or General Mills. What happens is they deliver whatever it is that they have actually produced to the grain silos that are located in the Chicago area and other areas of the Midwest. At the Chicago Mercantile Exchange or the Chicago Board of Trade, which are the two biggest commodity trading markets in the world, agricultural enterprises go to sell their goods before those goods are even harvested. But in fact, it often happens before those goods are even planted. And purchasers of those goods go to those markets in order to lock in a price to purchase those goods for goods that are not even harvested yet. If you've ever heard of friends of yours, or maybe you yourself, have tried to lock in oil prices for the winter. Maybe it's the summer, and you heat your house with oil. And you enter into a contract with your oil company to promise to buy X number of hundreds of gallons of oil, or to use them for the winter, and you lock in your price at $3.50 a gallon, or whatever it is. You are doing the exact same thing. You're locking in your price for a good early in the season, before anyone knows what that price is really going to be or not. And this is what farmers and purchasers of agricultural products do at the Commodities Futures Exchange. And that's why it's called Futures Exchanges, because you're betting on the prices, the future prices, of goods to be harvested in the future. So let's say that an agricultural enterprise determines that they must get $4 a bushel for their corn in order to make a profit and survive. They will go to the commodities market and place a sell order for $4 a bushel for corn that maybe, perhaps this is April, for corn that's not even going to be harvested until September of that year or the following year. Somewhere in the market is a cereal company or a purchaser of corn who's saying to themselves, we don't know what's going to happen to corn prices. It could be a good year, it could be an awful weather year, and that means the price of corn is going to go high, and we're going to find ourselves stuck with a high price. So maybe we can lock in a good price on corn, just the way you try and lock in a good price on oil before the winter sets. And so they would go to the market and they would say agree to that $4 a bushel. Now, to make the commodities markets work, there need to be more than just the sellers of the agricultural good and the buyers of the agricultural good, because both of them are looking to lock in the best possible prices for themselves. The farmer to get a high enough price to survive, the cereal companies get a low enough price to justify the cost of production. So only 2% of the people involved, of the trades involved at the commodities exchanges, are actually between farmers and purchasers of agricultural products. And they're called hedgers. They are hedging their bets. 98% of the trades are taking place between people called speculators. And these are people, quite frankly, who have money to gamble with. They don't want corn. They don't want to buy it. They don't want to sell it. They don't want to wake up and find 200,000 bushels of corn dumped on their front lawn. But what they do is they will buy a futures contract for corn. Once again, it's April. They'll buy a contract for several 100,000 bushels of corn that's going to be harvested in September, in the hope that they can sell that to someone else before September comes. And so 98% of these trades that are taking place have nothing to do with farmers or cereal companies. It has everything to do with people who are trying to buy a contract for $4 and then sell it for $4.02. Because maybe they buy it for $4 and there's a weather report that says weather is going to be awful in the Midwest, and everyone begins to think, maybe the corn crop will be destroyed, or parts of it will, and that'll push the price up. So the speculator who bought a corn contract for $4 a bushel says, well, prices are going to go up. If you want it, I'll sell it for $4.02 or $4.03. Someone else is saying, you know what, I think it's going to go up to $4.10, so I'll buy it at $4.03 and then sell it at $4.10. As this process works its way in between April and September, what happens is the farmer has been able to lock in the price that he needs. The cereal company will eventually be able to lock in the price that they need to make the product. And all the risk that these two players would normally have to assume themselves, because you don't know what the weather's going to be like, you don't know if there's going to be floods or tornadoes, you don't know if there's going to be a plague of locusts, you don't know if the country is going to sign a grain deal with Russia or the Ukraine or India. You don't know what's going to happen. All that risk of volatile prices gets transferred onto these gamblers. People who are willing to risk thousands of dollars in an effort to buy at the right price and sell at the right price, not because they're interested in the product themselves. If you've ever seen the movie Trading Places, which is several decades old by now, there's actually a very, very good scene, and it's very realistic, about how this trading takes place towards the very end of the movie. How the trading takes place is beginning to change. The traditional way the trading takes place is that the opening bell rings on the floor of the exchange, and people who want to buy contracts are yelling out around these round circular pits. They're yelling out, I want 300, 300. And they're using hand gestures to gesture towards themselves, meaning they want to buy contracts. People who want to sell contracts are doing the opposite. They're also yelling, but they're pushing, using finger clues. Now, these are not stockbrokers who are in Brooks Brothers gray, flannel suits. Actually, they're kind of silly looking. They wear bright orange jackets, or peppermint pink and white, or the most god-awful lime green you've ever seen. And they do this so that when they're standing around the pit screaming and yelling and gesturing at each other, they get to know, oh yeah, the guy in the lime green jacket with the pink button is trader number 6432. And that's important because when a deal is made, the people who are trading will write down on a small piece of cardboard the price, who they made the deal with, they fold it up, and they fling it into the pit. And in the middle of the pit are all these poor people working the machines, the computers, wearing goggles so they don't get hit in the eye with a flying piece of cardboard, entering this information as soon as possible. And every time a match hits the computer, there is a big light board up on the wall. And the light board will say, corn just sold at $4 a bushel. Then a few seconds later, 403. A few seconds later, 407. A few seconds later, went down to 405. A few seconds later, down to 402 again. And the price keeps changing all day long. Commodities are those goods where the consumer does not see a difference between one producer and another. They are all traded at the Chicago Mercantile Exchange, the Chicago Board of Trade, or at the New York Mercantile Exchange, which is actually owned by the Chicago interests. And those goods include soybeans, pork bellies, corn, oat, wheat, flour, sugar, as well as non-agricultural products. Products we call extractives, meaning they come out of the ground. Gold, silver, platinum, home heating oil, propane, crude oil. So when you hear the news say oil closed at $70 a barrel, they're talking about these exchanges, and they're talking about the last trade that was made. The buyers and the sellers of these goods have locked in the prices they need. Everyone else is simply trying to make a quick buck. Some of them win, and some of them lose. But the idea is the risk is transferred from the farmer, who is at the place of having to take the lowest possible price for his or her good and barely being able to survive because of the nature of perfect competition, and transfers that risk onto people willing to take that risk for them. And that's how the commodities markets work. Now, being in perfect competition is no cakewalk for the producer, because, as we said, the consumer sees your product exactly the same as your competitors. I got 2 potatoes here. That one's $2.99 a pound. That one's $2.75 a pound. I'll buy the $2.75 pound. You do this every time you go into the supermarket. If you see a bunch of the same thing, and one of them is mismarked, or it's marked down a little, grab it. Got a deal. One of the most common ways out of this dilemma is to convince the public that your product is different. It is not the same. This potato is not the same as this potato because this one is organic, or this one is local, or this one was fresh picked today, or there's something different about it. This one's GMO and this one's not. That gets into the next market structure, which we will save for the next video. And that market structure is called imperfect competition, or more commonly, monopolistic competition. This is Tom Simmons. Hopefully that cleared up the concept of perfect competition for you. And now I'm going to have to go cook something with these potatoes that I just cut up. See you later.